I'm Jennifer Feck, 5th grade teacher at Dryden Elementary School, and every year I happen to get parents who are asking how they can work with their kids or how they can make sure that their kids don't experience the summer slide. I often get requests for workbook recommendations or enrichment packets for over the summer, and so I decided just to put together a little video going over some of the things that I do recommend for parents to do with their kids over the summer. um, I'll go over a few reading and a few math suggestions. Since I do teach 5th grade, this is mostly geared towards 5th graders, but most of the ideas that I have could be applied to other age levels as well, just with a little bit of variation. So the first thing is always to remember to have fun. It is summer break. Kids are naturally curious. There's a lot of really great opportunities all around you that you may just not realize are great learning opportunities as well as fun summer opportunities. And to be a good literacy role model. So to set that example for reading for information, for reading for enjoyment, to have the kids see that you're doing that as well. There are so many games that the kids probably already play or have played before that can help develop their literacy skills. Games like Boggle, Scrabble, Buzzword Junior, Clue, Trivial Pursuit. Trivial Pursuit now has so many different um, versions of it at different interest levels for sports, for Disney, for all kinds of different interest levels that you really could have your child pick out a Trivial Pursuit game of their interest and have them play that to develop some of their skills too. Categories: Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Crosswords, Mad Libs, scavenger hunts, and really these are suggestions for games that are already out there, but you actually could have your kids create their own board games complete with written directions as well, and having to think through that process and then write down directions that are clear and easy to follow is a great way for them to practice their reading and writing skills too. Day trips is another great way for your child to practice many different skills. You can look into local resources to see what's new and exciting around the area. You could do museums downtown. You can talk about different exhibits. And so what you could do is have your child read about the exhibit or the location, have them research more about a topic that they're interested in seeing, talk about questions that you and your child may both have about the exhibit. You could check out books at the library about the topic and read about them. Have your child look up the directions and have your child help to navigate too. So reading those directions step by step of where you need to go and how you need to get there is great informational literacy. Then actually go and visit that exhibit or location and compare your experience there to what you had read about it or what you had planned about it as well. You can also have your child kind of journal or write about the experience as well. They could write a story, they could just kind of write down their thoughts from the day, write down more questions that they have that they might want to look up now after they've visited an exhibit. And you can learn something new together. Informational literacy is definitely something that the kids should be practicing. And so that would be reading pamphlets, reading how-to guides, building something new together. It could be anything from Star Wars Legos models to how to grow your own garden. There are so many different areas that kids are naturally interested in, and having them just learn more about that on their own, checking out a book from the library, searching some things online, you guys can learn something new together and have them do a little bit of that work up front. Cooking is another great informational literacy skill that the kids can practice over the summer too. You could have your child pick out a new recipe from the internet or from a cookbook. You could help your child to acquire all of those ingredients and to complete the recipe. Make sure that your child is the one reading the recipe from start to finish. Not only what are all of the ingredients, but what are all of the steps? Do you have everything that you need? Do you have all of the measuring cups, all of the right pans or pots that you need? And then what is it step by step that needs to be done? Does an oven need to be preheated? Is there something that needs to be made ahead of time? All of those types of reading and understanding how all of the pieces go together to create the whole would be really great for the kids to practice. Book clubs are another great way for your child to stay engaged in reading over the summer. So you can help them to maybe create a book club with some of their friends or some other kids in the neighborhood. Let your child have some choice in the book. Obviously, it's good to monitor that or help with suggestions, but let your child choose something they're interested in reading. and maybe just help facilitate a book club. Maybe your child wants you to be a part of it, or maybe they don't at this stage in the game. They might just want it to be with their friends, but you could offer that place for their friends to meet each week or a couple times a week to talk about the book that they're reading, to maybe read some of it together. You could also offer to help with an activity that correlates with the book, or some kind of light snack that might even go along with the book as well. And you can get your child involved in planning all of those things as well. Family reading time is something that's really important, and I think that especially over the summer when things can be really busy, long days at the pool, summer camps, some family reading time, if you choose a time each day or maybe a couple times a week, or maybe if it's even just once a week, that is a time that works for everyone in the family, and you all can either just read to yourselves, or maybe you're going to do some shared reading and all read the same thing, take turns reading aloud to one another. Or maybe you're even just going to talk. Maybe it's just talking about what each of you read that week, or recommendations that you might have, or um, maybe recommendations for things that they would not say that everybody should read. Or maybe it's even just having mom and dad read together. Maybe it's having older brothers and younger brothers and siblings read to one another. But making sure that everybody has that common time to read sets a really good example about the importance of reading. Writing also is super important too. So that's something that I feel like in the summer definitely kind of drops away a little bit too. But you can just have your child keep a journal or a diary, have them just kind of reflect at the end of the day, at the end of a week, about what's been going on. You could encourage your child to write a movie script and then actually have them make that movie. They could write letters or emails to friends, family members, people on vacation. Maybe if you're going to go somewhere, they could write out a postcard to a couple of people. You could write a story together about an activity that you did or an experience that you had. And then there's also this website called storybird.com that is a great place that you could sign your child up to have an account, and the kids would be able to pick the artwork that inspires them and then write a story based on that artwork as well. This year I know there's been a lot of buzz around the Common Core, so I'm not going to spend too much time drilling any kind of standards or anything in here, but for those who are interested in the Common Core, what I have listed here are just the 10 anchor standards for reading, which basically means that each grade level does the same standard but in just a different depth or a different complexity. So most of these standards are things that can be accomplished just by having conversations about the books and the activities that I've already mentioned in this video. Things in the Common Core that are really strong are providing text evidence for what you have to say. So when your child is talking about the book that they're reading, ask them specifically what happened in the book, specifically what did the author say, just talk to them about it. Same thing with summarizing and character development, vocabulary development. And that one there, vocabulary development, also would be a great place for you just to model that as well. Don't be afraid to use more complex vocabulary words around your kids and use that as teachable moments. Teach them what some of that vocabulary means. Teach them that it's okay to use more sophisticated vocabulary and to ask questions about what those words mean too. Text structure, which just means how did the author organize all of the information, which we talked a lot about this year about, is it comparing and contrasting, is it listing in a time order, so even just bringing awareness to how various texts are organized and structured, and the point of view that an author might have in a story. So if you're reading, or even if you watch a movie, whose point of view is the story being told from, and would it make a difference if it was somebody else telling the story? And then evaluate various medias. So this is one that could be a lot of fun. Read a book together and then go see the corresponding movie. There are so many books that are coming out as movies now, but comparing what similarities and what differences there are between the books and the movies is a big push too. Evaluating specific claims basically means if there's an opinion piece, where does that opinion come from? What's the evidence to back up the opinion? Maybe have a mock debate. But if you're debating something or disagreeing about something, push people to provide their evidence for their point of view. Comparing different texts, and then basically 10 is reading complex texts and informational literacy. and then apply that informational literacy. So that's something I mentioned already too, is read a how-to book, read a recipe, but then actually follow through with it. Don't just read it, but actually do what you learned about. On to math. The big skills practiced in math in 5th grade are math facts, which would be multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and we practice this with the single, the double, and the triple digits. We do fractions, decimals, and percents. We do probability, estimation, lots and lots of problem solving, and real life application problem solving. Area and volume, number patterns, properties of shapes, and measurement. And each of these can definitely be integrated into everyday life pretty easily. So there are different games for this too: Sudoku, Yahtzee, Monopoly, Scrabble as the scorekeeper, and pretty much any game that your child is acting as the scorekeeper is a great way to keep practicing their math skills. Shopping and money is another great way. We practiced a lot this year with what different money might be. We practiced a lot with sale items, percents off, providing tip and tax onto a bill if you go out to eat. So there are so many opportunities in everyday life to practice this. So you can actually have your child compare sale flyers with you and decide mathematically which stores have the best sales for the items on your list that week. Have your child estimate the total grocery bill and then compare the actual receipt to their estimation. Have your child calculate the sale prices of the items marked as a percent discount. So if it says that cereal is 10% off, with the actual price of the cereal and then the 10% off, how much are you actually going to be paying? If you go out to eat, like I mentioned, have your child calculate the tip, and then you should probably check it to make sure their math is right, but have them do that up front too. You can have your child help make the budget plan for a day trip. So if you're going to do one of those things I mentioned before about maybe going to a museum or a location, you can have them figure out, are there tickets to get in that need to be paid for? What about money for gas? What about, are you eating lunch there and need to pay for snacks or food? What is the budget going to be for every person going, and then as a whole? You also could give your child a set amount of money for the outing. So if you are planning on eating lunch there, or if there is a ticket entrance fee, give them a set amount of money, and they need to plan and budget for themselves to make sure they're going to have enough money and monitor their spending for everything they need. You can build something new together, which again I mentioned before with the informational literacy, but it also goes into math as well, because actually making that plan, having to make a sketch, having to revise your plan, thinking all of that through, especially if you're doing things like having to measure for a garden or a model, or planning a backyard party. What kind of tables do we have? What kind of tent size do we have? Any of those things where they're measuring and planning and having to rework their plan are great informational literacy and mathematical skills. Cooking again crosses over to both. Maybe you need to double or triple a batch of brownies, let's say, that you're taking to a party. There are so many barbecues, 4th of July parties, all of those things. Have your child do the math to double or triple their recipes. We did practice this a little bit this year, but especially with those fractions, if you needed 3/4 a cup of sugar, but you're making 2 or 3 batches, how much sugar do you need now? If you needed 2 cups of milk, but you're making 2 or 3 batches of something, how much do you need now? Have your child do that. I recommend probably looking over their math if you're actually planning on feeding this food to anybody to make sure your measurements are correct, but have them do the work up front. Traveling too. So this is something that actually my family and I did a lot as well, is kind of an estimation challenge. If you know the distance of where your destination is, and you can say that you're traveling at an average mile or an average rate of maybe 65 miles per hour most of the way, how long will it take you to get there? And what about if you factor in 1 bathroom break? What if you need 2 breaks? And have everybody in the family estimate your arrival time for where you're going and see which time comes the closest, and maybe even offer a prize. Maybe the closest time gets to decide what you guys are having for dessert. Maybe the closest time gets to pick the first activity you do at your destination, but just kind of make it a fun challenge. In my family, it was always whoever was closest was the champion of the whole wide world. I don't know if that'll work for your kid, but it worked for us. We all wanted to be champions, so just kind of have fun with it. I always actually say Google also, which I think people maybe not realize, if you haven't looked, there are so many wonderful resources if you just Google it. If you Google multiplication practice worksheets, there are so many free resources for games and printable worksheets and ideas out there if you just use Google, if you're running out of things for yourself, to do. And then, of course, there's always the question for Common Core Math, too. And there are a ton of Common Core Math standards, but really what it comes down to is trying new ways to work on problems and explaining how you solved your problems. So those are going to be two of the biggest hitters right there for Common Core Math, is making sure that your child can explain how they did the math. Not just, I typed it onto a calculator, but if you weren't using the calculator, how did you work through that problem? How did you do the math? Practicing mental math strategies, making sure that they're practicing the real-world application, which this video is full of those suggestions for how you do that, explaining the patterns and different things around them, making estimations, so again, that estimation challenge for, if you're going to a certain destination, graphing and mapping things out or organizing data or information is also something that they could practice. So maybe if they're taking a poll for dinner, who wants what for dinner, you're grilling out, who wants burgers, who wants hot dogs, then maybe putting it into a graph or some kind of organized data. And then practicing conversions. So that's also one too that you might have to work a little bit harder at, and maybe you'll even need to help your kids a little more with. But if we're talking about how many teaspoons versus how many cups versus how many gallons and how many quarts, things like that, kind of practicing conversions back and forth with that is also something that they should be practicing too. So I hope that you found some of these suggestions to be helpful. The opportunities are all around you, and most of the time you're probably not even realizing that it's a learning opportunity right there in front of you. There's nothing wrong with also having your child work with a workbook or some worksheets to practice some really specific skills too. However, it is summer. The kids want to have fun. We can definitely make learning fun and just kind of integrate it into all of the great things that I know that everyone's going to be doing this summer. If anybody has questions, please feel free to email me at any time at jfac@sd25.org.